But China supports Russia, right? So that's an extra layer of complication to the already complicated U.S.-China relationship, with the Treasury Department recently announcing new sanctions on 2 Chinese companies accused of directly helping Russia build drones to be used in that invasion of Ukraine. Our Janice Mackey-Frayer just sat down with the U.S. ambassador to China. She's joining us now from Beijing. Congratulations on that interview, Janice. Talk us through what you heard about the status, right, of the relationship now between the U.S. and China, China's support of Russia. Walk us through the headlines.
Well, Nicholas Burns, the U.S. ambassador here, didn't hesitate to openly criticize China for its support of Russia. He told me it's troubling that China will say that it's neutral in the war in Ukraine, but that its actions show the opposite, with protection for Russia diplomatically, economically, strategically. And the U.S. says hundreds of Chinese companies here are exporting so-called dual-use goods to the Russian defense industrial base. Now with North Korea, another China ally, potentially escalating the war, Beijing could face even more pressure from the U.S. and the West. China is already a competitive threat and a strategic rival for the U.S., he says. And he makes no apology for U.S. policy. Here's what he had to say.
Do you think the policy is too hawkish on China?
I think our policy is right. We have to compete. Whether you call it hawkish or not, we have to be clear-eyed by the dangers and the threat that the People's Republic of China poses to the United States, to our national security, whether it's in the Taiwan Strait or the South China Sea, whether it's on China's support for Russia. So it's a complicated relationship. It's a very challenging relationship, but it's without any question the most consequential relationship that we Americans have with any other country in the world.
Ambassador Burns also criticized China for overcapacity, saying some goods are being produced at 2 or 3 times domestic demand, with an eye on dumping the excess on the global market. We're talking about EVs, lithium batteries, solar panels. He says that the risk of China Shock 2.0 is a, quote, genuine threat. Hallie?
So interesting, Janice. I have to tell you, back here in Washington, you know where my head is at, and that is in the election that is just now 12 days away, of course, between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Give us sort of the vibe check from where you're standing in Beijing about what November 6th may look like here in the U.S.
Well, it's the one issue that Democrats and Republicans can agree on, right? That China is this threat to the U.S. And being tough on China is always part of the election cycle. Look, Beijing is not going to say anything about the election to avoid being accused of interfering, but China's leadership is watching this so closely. The U.S.-China relationship is fragile right now. It's been a lot worse. There have been some improvements. There are official talks now resuming on some levels. But where there's a real disconnect, Hallie, is at the people-to-people level, the level that China's President Xi Jinping has held up as this real arena for cooperation. And this is where Ambassador Burns called out China. Listen to this.
We do find a willingness to cooperate in some areas, but I'll give you an example where it's not happening. On 94 separate occasions in the last 11 months since the San Francisco summit last autumn, the government of China, the security services, have acted to actually impede our efforts here in our embassy in Beijing, in our consulates in China, to carry on basic programs trying to bring Chinese and American people together in a variety of ways. Seminars, concerts, just meetings to discuss one issue or another. These are not official meetings between government officials, but between citizens of both of our countries. So, you really they can't have it both ways. You can't say you want to promote people-to-people contacts and then try to actively impede them.
Hallie, when he talks about impeding, he had a grocery list of examples: harassing people, going to meetings, to shows, in one case, even cutting the electricity to an embassy event. And that in itself is revealing of the tripwires here. Remember, China broke off all communications after the balloon incident in February 2023. And the militaries just started talking again last month. Nuclear talks were called off recently as a protest over U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. So the diplomatic lines between these two countries are so few these days. And China has shown how easily they can be cut. Hallie?
Janice Mackey-Frayer, thank you very much for that. Really fascinating stuff. Appreciate it, live from Beijing.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.